back to the College Basketball Bracket Science Podcast, your encyclopedia for the college basketball season. We have a typical show going on today, talking about a few of the results from the week, Monday through Thursday. Not too much happened, but it did have some effect on the seed lines. And then, of course, we're going to talk about our full field of 68 bracketology. The meat of the show today it is going to be just seed list, 1 through 68, instead of, the matchups, because those are just constantly changing with all the the rules that are in place for bracketing metrics for the committee. So we're just going to go seed list 1 through 68, and then we will talk about some of these resumes, why some teams are a little higher than you think, why some teams might be a little lower than you think. Then we got a little special segment today. We're going to talk about overrated versus underrated teams. It's going to get kind of hot takey. We're going to have some teams that you might not expect to see overrated, a few you might not expect to see, in the underrated category, and then of course we will dive into to the slate this upcoming weekend. Busy Saturday, busy Sunday, even with the Super Bowl going on, of course. But first, we're going to talk about a little bit of the news and notes that went around. We got two just quick things to talk about real quick. The big news with Mike Woodson and then Leonard Hamilton as well. But before we do that, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button below. Really would help us out. Going into March, hit the post notifications so you're updated on your college basketball bracketing and everything that comes with that. Follow us on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, at Bracket Science with 2 S's. All right, let's dive right in. The big news, Mike Woodson out of a job at Indiana. Coming at the end of the year, they're still discussing the details of how he's going to exit. This was always going to happen. It was inevitable just coming up. I mean, it has been just a absolute pathetic season for a talented roster. In Indiana, he had all the money in the world and put together a team that is currently 55th at KenPom, and I think even worse than that in the net rankings. I'm trying to find them real quick. Yes, they are 63rd in the net with all that money that they had to spend. Indiana fans, ecstatic. They deserve a better coach in there. This has been kind of, the first 2 seasons he made the NCAA tournament and has just dropped off since then. Even in those first 2 seasons where Mike Woodson made the NCAA tournament, he did not hit his preseason expectation over at KenPom. He failed to, make his team better, as it would seem. They got worse every single year at KenPom from preseason to the end of the season. So good for Indiana fans. I know they all just want him out of there. And then Leonard Hamilton as well is retiring at the end of the year from Florida State. No surprise here. He's getting currently sued by former players for not paying NIL funds. Florida State has really, kind of fallen off as of late as well. So this was always kind of going to happen too. It just put it in the notes. I didn't think they would do the Mike Woodson thing this early in the season just because he's an alum. I mean, I think they 100% should. They should show that they, still care about their basketball program and shouldn't let this guy who seems to have just no clue running the program. But it was always going to happen, and it finally happened. So good news there. Let's move on. Let's talk about the results from the week that led to some changes in bracketology back on Monday. The only 2 games we want to talk about, number 8, Iowa State went to number 16, Kansas. Kansas dominated from start to finish, 69-52. Iowa State going through a real rough stretch they've lost 3 in a row, but they have really been struggling to score the basketball. Curtis Jones had been held in check. Now, this has all happened once Milan Momcilovic went out with an injury. Who would have thought? He might be the most important player in the nation. A just abysmal loss for Pitt at home against Virginia. Virginia went in, dominated from start to finish, 73-57. Virginia stinks. Pitt, they're fallen pretty far off of the bubble. Their tournament chances are slim to none right now unless they win the ACC tournament. On Tuesday was the busy day, as it's been just about every week in college basketball. We got the graphic pulled up. As you see, I'll mention it again, we do it in just numerical order for the results usually, and the biggest results, I should say. It should just be noted that Auburn just kind of flew under the radar in this game. They played Oklahoma, who's like a 7-8 seed, good team. They just beat them by 28 at home. They're just so unbelievable that they're flying under the radar. Let's not just push them aside because they're just taking care of business. This team is awesome. Vanderbilt lost to number 6 Florida, 86-75. Vanderbilt hung in there. They looked good, but Florida kind of just pulled away late. The game was closer than this, but Florida ended up getting the win. Number 7 Purdue went to Iowa and won 90-81. Iowa lost Owen Freeman for the season. Kind of a tough loss there. They're not in the tournament conversation right now. Story, Braden Smith on an absolute tear right now. In this game, he had 31 points. He might be a first-team All-American. He looks really, really good. Number 9, Michigan State lost their second straight game in the city of Los Angeles. This one at UCLA, 63-61, thanks to an Eric Daly, last couple seconds, knocked down a little mid-range floater sort of thing. Eric Daly gets the job done. UCLA starting to build up a better resume than you might think. Number 11, Marquette, and number 12, St. John's took place in the Big East clash. These two teams were at the top of the Big East, so this was a big one at Madison Square Garden, and St. John's got them 72-64. St. John's in full control of the Big East at this point. They got a huge one coming up actually tonight that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Baylor went to number 13, Texas Tech. Texas Tech just continues to absolutely roll. 73-59. Texas Tech might be a top 10 team. They are really good. Number 14, Kentucky. They are falling apart. They go to number 25, Ole Miss and Chris Beard squad, and just honestly get pummeled. Absolutely pummeled. 84-98 was the final score. Kentucky has now lost 4 of 5 and are under 500 in the SEC. They are 4-5, so little rough stretch here, and that win was at Tennessee. Kind of random there. 2 of the games they've lost have been at home to Alabama and Arkansas, and 2 of the games on the road they lost at Vanderbilt and lost to at Ole Miss. Their other loss in conference play was at Georgia, so their resume, they obviously have some of the best wins in the country with the win over they beat Gonzaga in overtime in a semi-away environment. They also obviously beat Duke early in the year. They beat Louisville. They beat Florida. So they've still got a solid resume, but 4-5 in the SEC. If they end up going sub 500, give Mark Pope some time. Their defense is abysmal right now. It is horrible. They are currently second in the country in offensive efficiency and 108th in defense efficiency. Sound familiar? Yeah, it kind of sounds like the John Calipari team last year. In fact, they have a very similar resume to that team last year with Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham. But give them time. If you would have been told that you were the 14th team in the country and just lost to Ole Miss, you would have been perfectly fine with that in the preseason. Mark Pope done a great job. Number 20, Arizona went to BYU and took them down 85-74. Caleb Love continues to be on a tear. Jaden Bradley looks good. KJ Lewis looks good. And Henry Visar, know the name Henry Visar. Ever since Motejais Krivas went out for Arizona, Henry Visar has been kind of thrown into a bigger role, and he has just been awesome. He has come out of nowhere and playing some great basketball. Speaking of the Mike Woodson debacle, this was pretty much the last straw. Indiana went to number 21, Wisconsin, and got down 19-2 immediately, and then it was like 29-6 or something, just ugly. Wisconsin ends up winning 76-64. Indiana is, 6 or 7 teams out of the bubble conversation. People keep asking me, they're like, how is Indiana even still in consideration? The short answer is the bubble teams are not very good. Every single year you go through it and you're like, yeah, the bubble teams are worse than you might think. Their resumes, so Indiana still with a sliver of hope, but, not really. Another team that's fallen off like crazy, Arizona State loses at home to Kansas State 71-70. Bobby Hurley, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to make it another year. We'll see. The most surprising result of the night was Clemson losing at home to Georgia Tech in triple overtime. Final score was 89-86. Georgia Tech just beat Louisville. Now this game was at Georgia Tech. Now they go to Clemson and beat them. How about that little stretch for Damon Stoudemire's squad? But a tough seed line at least loss for Clemson in this one. USC also lost at Northwestern. USC hanging on to kind of a sliver of hope for at-large consideration. Not really anymore. Moving on to Wednesday, number 2 Duke beat Syracuse. No surprise. Syracuse is awful. This is tough to watch. They got to move on there from Coach Autry. This is as bad of a Syracuse season as I can ever remember. Number 15 Missouri went to number 4 Tennessee. They had it close. They led by 8 at the half, but Tennessee ended up winning 85-81. Missouri, great team, great resume. They're not just winning games that they shouldn't win. They're a really good basketball team. So is Tennessee, though, obviously. Number 23, Illinois, went to Rutgers and got beat 82-73. Illinois really falling off as of late. Rutgers starting to play some good basketball. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper were at least playing in this one, staying healthy, and they got the job done kind of no sweat-wise. They look good in this one. Oregon went to number 24. Michigan got beat 82-76. Michigan picks up the win. Oregon now 5-7 in the Big Ten. I think we all kind of saw that coming. And then how about Arkansas and John Calipari go to Texas and win 78-70. Last two games for Arkansas, go to Kentucky and win. Now go to Texas and win. Road wins carry a big weight in, how KenPom ranks you, how the net ranks you, and especially how the committee ranks you. Your road record is shown. Great win here, Arkansas. They're starting to figure things out, it seems. We'll see if this trend continues. Cincinnati goes to UCF and wins 93-83. Cincinnati's not in the bubble conversation right now. They're far outside. UCF has been like two of the last teams in, two of the first teams out. You can't give up 93 points to Cincinnati on your home floor. Cincinnati cannot score the basketball whatsoever all season. Now they go in and score 93 on your defense. Not very good in the eyes of the committee for this UCF squad. They're on the outside looking in right now. Team on the inside looking out, Wake Forest goes to Stanford and survives 79-73. Good win for Wake Forest. Still no bad losses. Even if they'd have lost at Stanford, not a bad loss, but this is a great win. Wake Forest, they're trending towards the tournament right now. For Stanford, here's what I will say. Trust Kyle Smith. This is a tough place to win. I think Kyle Smith, within the next 2 years, mark my words, is going to get you to a tournament, if not even win a game in the tournament. Kyle Smith's a tremendous coach. Be patient there. He's going to build that program back up. LSU lost at Georgia. No surprise there. 81-62. Georgia, just one of those games there where you can't lose. West Virginia lost at TCU 65-60. West Virginia crawling towards the bubble a little bit. They're still comfortably in. Here's what I will say about this year in the bracketology portion. The 8 and 9 seeds, the West Virginias, the Creightons, are so far ahead of the 11 seeds. Like we mentioned, Indiana is still on the bubble. So these teams are comfortably in. So if you see them as like an 8, 9, 10 seed, they're still a lot better than even the 11 seeds, first four. So they're kind of separating themselves. But West Virginia also got the news that Tucker DeVries will not return this year. Looks like he's going to be able to get a medical red shirt. Hopefully he's, this is not how you want to see his career end, especially going for his dad. I think he should get the medical red shirt. That's what everything's pointing towards. He didn't play enough games. So hopefully we'll see Tucker DeVries back next year. Creighton goes to Providence, speaking of them, and wins 80-69. Escape one there. And then the other two just notable ones, two of the, 12-ish seeds. Bradley, I have Drake instead of Bradley, but could easily be Bradley. Bradley and Arkansas State both lose. Marshall beats Arkansas State. Belmont beats Bradley. And then on Thursday, the only two games we really need to mention, Ohio State wins at home over number 18 Maryland, 73-70. Bruce Thornton hit a couple, 5-7 seconds left, something like that, just a bank three, just hucked it up. That was Bruce Thornton's game. He scored 31 in this one. He is awesome. People don't talk enough about Bruce Thornton. He is one of the best point guards in the country. And then St. Mary's lost at San Francisco, 65-64. Interesting result there. San Francisco's in second in the WCC this year. They are ahead of Gonzaga. I don't think San Francisco's very good. Even watching this game, I'm like, I just don't see it with the San Francisco team. But they beat St. Mary's, and St. Mary's has been, they were undefeated in the WCC going into that game. But they drop one there. They're still comfortably in the tournament. Now let's move on to we're just going to go through the section quick. We're not going to talk a ton about it. I didn't even post it on, our social medias just because it kind of leaned more towards just like a Big Ten breakdown. As you'll see, most of these teams seem to be in the Big Ten for some reason. But a couple teams that I think are overrated and a couple teams that I think are underrated. These are kind of just my own opinion where I don't see their ceiling as high as some others might really see. But these teams, as you'll notice, all have to be like they're all top 8 seeds at worst, even top 7 seeds. So starting with the overrated teams, the two teams that people aren't going to like, actually there might be a few more, but in the Big Ten, I think Michigan State is the most overrated basketball team in the country. They haven't beaten anyone. I know they started off the Big Ten slate 9-0, which is good. That's the second best conference. They're a good basketball team, don't get me wrong. But when they've played elite competition, they haven't won. They lost to Memphis on a neutral. They lost to Kansas on a neutral. They just lost at USC and UCLA. They have also played the 18th hardest Big Ten schedule to start the season, to start a conference play. There's 18 teams in the Big Ten, so they are dead last in strength of schedule in the Big Ten. Their best win, they won at Ohio State. That's a pretty good win, but Ohio State's not elite. They beat Illinois at home at Michigan State. They beat them by 2. We're going to talk about Illinois next, as who I also think is overrated. Illinois has 8 losses, so it's like they really haven't beaten anyone. People are seeing them as like Final Four national championship. They're not. I don't think they're going to get past the Sweet 16. If they get to the Sweet 16, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they're going further than that. Next up, let's talk about Illinois. Illinois they really got noticed when they went to Oregon and beat them 109-77. But as we're starting to see, Oregon's not that good. Oregon's 5-7 in the Big Ten. Illinois did beat Arkansas on a neutral, which we thought was great at the time. It's really not. They beat Wisconsin at Illinois by 6. I think Wisconsin's really good. And then they did beat Missouri by 3 on a neutral. This was early in the year. As of late, they have now lost, let me count it up here. They've lost 5 of 8. They're losing home games. They lost at home to Maryland by 21. They lost at home to USC, who's outside the tournament looking in. They just lost at Rutgers. I don't see the ceiling with this team that a lot of people see. A lot of people see them as like they're like, this is one of the best offensive teams in the country. They can go as far as, just about anyone. They're 23rd in offensive efficiency. That's good. They're 16th in defensive efficiency. What if I were to tell you Illinois is better on defense than offense? Would that change your mind about them, of why you see their ceiling as so high? I don't see it. I don't think they're going to get past the round of 32. If they make the Sweet 16, I guess. I don't think they're going to. I don't think this team's that good. Next up, sticking in the Big Ten, let's keep it going. Oregon. This one's kind of just self-explanatory. We won't even dive too much into it. They picked up a ton of great wins early. The computers never really liked them because they were all close wins. And now they're, 38th at KenPom, 42nd in offense efficiency, 48th in defense efficiency. Not a great team. Not a bad team. They're going to be in the tournament, but, they might win a game. But this one's not a hot take at all. Next couple might be hot takes. Let's talk about Marquette. I don't think Marquette's ceiling is as high as you might think. They're a good basketball team. They're a well-coached basketball team. I don't see them as a Final Four contender. I don't think I see them as an Elite 8 contender, maybe Sweet 16. They're good. They're just not great, which is kind of just the story of Marquette basketball. Shaka Smart, great coach. Don't get me wrong, but I want to see them really beat elite competition. Want to see them they play at Creighton on Saturday. We'll talk about that. Want to see them go to Creighton and beat them. Want to see them go to UConn and beat them. Want to see them go to St. John's and beat them. They haven't been able to do that. They lost at home to UConn, just lost at St. John's. They did win at home against Wisconsin, which pretty good win. They beat Purdue early in the year. They won at Maryland, which is that's aging even better than we might have thought. But other than that, they lost to Iowa State. They lost to Dayton. I'm a little bit concerned about them on neutral floor. I think their floor is high. I don't think they're going to get upset in the first round. If they lost in the round of 32, I wouldn't be surprised. They scream Sweet 16 to me. Not Elite 8, not Final Four. Next up, Louisville. Louisville shouldn't be mad that they're on this list because you guys have been so much better than most people would have thought. They're currently 27th at KenPom. You're probably looking at, I'm guessing they're probably going to be a 7 seed, if I had to guess, in March Madness. They just haven't really beaten anyone too awesome. They protect their home court, which is really good. They won at SMU. I think SMU is not I think they're so overrated as well. But anytime they play elite competition, they haven't really won. They beat West Virginia. I'm not that high on West Virginia either. They beat Indiana, but if they get matched up, if they're a 7 seed, they're going to be a popular pick to beat the 2 seed. It's not going to happen. If they were to play, someone like a Houston or a Purdue, I don't see them competing even at all. I see them getting blown out. Good team, not a great team. I don't know if that's considered overrated, but, it's kind of close. Next one is probably the hottest take of them all. How about Florida? I think Florida, some people see them as they could win the national championship. I have them as a 2 seed right now. I don't think so. I don't know what it is about this team. This one I'm just kind of going out on a limb on. I don't see them as a national championship contender. They lost at home to Missouri, which is okay. You're going to drop games. Their defense is statistically pretty good. They just don't really meet my eye test as much as some might. They're 5th at KenPom, which is really good. I mean, they started off 13-0. They lost at Kentucky, which isn't bad. They scored 100 points. I just don't see them as the elite. Kind of see them in the same boat as, the Tennessee. Tennessee could be on this list. I do think Tennessee's better than Florida. I think their ceiling's a little higher, quite frankly, which might sound crazy. I just think Tennessee's defense is so good that, I know their offense can stall, but they are so hard to score on. To me, Florida just isn't really great at anything, if that makes sense. They kind of rely on Walter Clayton a little too much, but good team, could get to the Elite Eight. I just don't see them as a national championship contender. So keep that as take it with a grain of salt. Like their expectations are obviously going to be higher than Oregon or Louisville in this case. I just don't see them as a team where, take them to the championship game. I wouldn't do that. Now let's talk a little bit more positive. Let's talk about underrated teams. How about Wisconsin? Wisconsin flying under the radar every time I post a graphic. Like Wisconsin is a 4 seed right now. They're a 4 seed across the board. Every time I post it, they're like, how is Wisconsin a 4 seed? They're just flying under the radar. They are a really good basketball team. They're 13th at Ken Pom right now. They lost 3 in a row to, at one point in the season, they lost to Michigan at home. Then they lost at Marquette, and then they lost at Illinois. 3 teams that are, top 6 seeds in March Madness. Since then, they've been pretty awesome. They've protected their home court. They've been winning some away games. They did lose on the road to UCLA by 2. They lost on the road to Maryland by 8. No harm there. This is a good basketball team. They can score with just about anyone. Michigan is getting a lot of love because they can also really score the basketball and they're aesthetically pleasing. Wisconsin's in the same boat, yet I think Wisconsin's even a better basketball team. So, watch out for Wisconsin this year. They are much better than they were last year. Missouri, another team, as mentioned, if you just watch that Tennessee game, you can see it. People don't score on Tennessee's defense, and Missouri was scoring on their defense. Caleb Grill has really popped off. Tamar Bates is great. Mark Mitchell's been really good. His team's really good, and Tony Perkins as well. His team's really good. Watch out for Missouri. We won't dive too far into their resume because I don't think they're really flying under the radar that much. Another team that's kind of flying under the radar is Ole Miss. A lot of people, kind of write off Ole Miss as a basketball school. They're really good. They have the best win out of anyone in the entire country this year, the win at Alabama. That's better than anyone. Auburn hasn't lost at home. Duke hasn't lost at home. Alabama is without a doubt probably your third best team in the country right now. And Ole Miss beat them at home. That is the best win in the country right now. When they lose close games. They lost at Mississippi State by 3. They lost at home to Texas A&M by 1. Texas A&M's really good. They're going to be the next team we talk about. They lost at Missouri by 8. They lost at home to Auburn. Everyone loses to Auburn. They honestly should have beat Purdue on a neutral site. They didn't. They lost by 2, and then they did lose at Memphis kind of badly. But other than that, they've beaten good teams. They drilled Kentucky. They beat Texas at home. We mentioned they won at Alabama. They won at Arkansas. They won at home badly against Georgia. This team's got some serious skill. They beat Louisville by 23 at Louisville, by the way. So that kind of goes hand in hand with this Louisville take. Ole Miss and Chris Beard has made a national championship game before. If this team were to make, an Elite Eight run, I would not be too particularly surprised. Would it be surprising? Yes, but I could see it happening. Next up, Texas A&M. This isn't as much of a, Texas A&M is a top 5 team in the country, underrated, as their resume is completely underrated. I have them as a 2 seed right now. Their wins are fantastic. They're 6-3 in the SEC right now. They're currently 6th in wins above bubble, 6th in the country in wins above bubble, 7-5 in quad 1, 4-0 in quad 2. They're 11-5 in the first 2 quadrants. You kind of put them off at the beginning of the year when they lost their opening night game at UCF. Since then, it's been pretty much dominance. They lost to Oregon in the Players Era Festival on a neutral site, which is when Oregon was just beating everyone. Their other losses, they lost at home to Alabama. No harm there. Alabama's awesome. They might have been, I can't remember. They might have been without Wade Taylor in that one. I know Wade Taylor missed a couple games. I can't remember if it was against Alabama. I think it was. Then they lost at Kentucky. Nothing bad there. And then they lost at Texas, where, quite frankly, they shouldn't have lost. But they lost by 1 at Texas, blew that huge second-half lead. They have good wins, too. Ole Miss, at Ole Miss, we just talked about that. They won at Oklahoma. They beat Texas earlier in the year badly. They beat them by 20. They won it on a neutral site against Texas Tech, who's obviously awesome. They beat Creighton. They beat Wake Forest. They went to Indianapolis and beat Purdue in a semi-away game. The resume's awesome. They're a 2 seed right now. Next up, so of course this was made before last night's games, I do still have St. Mary's, and I'm still bought in on this take. Their big 3 is awesome. Marcelonis, Marasakis, and Mitchell Saxon as your big 3. That's pretty freaking good. This team has, they have the capabilities to probably lose first round, but they also have the capabilities to win a few games. Randy Bennett is the most underrated coach in the country. I stand by that. He's been there for 24 years and has done nothing but win. They've been beaten. They beat Gonzaga at home. They just lost that game, but in the other competition, they beat San Francisco at home at St. Mary's by 20. They beat Washington State at Washington State. They're beating the teams they should be beaten. San Francisco won. Of course, it pops up right before I make this, but I still see, I think they're an underrated team. They're flying underrated. They should, without a doubt. I know they just lost, but prior to that game, they should, without a doubt, be ranked in the AP poll. There's no reason they shouldn't be. Next up, UCLA. UCLA is a team that could beat just about anyone in the country. They won on a semi-away game at Arizona. Arizona's been looking awesome, and this is when Arizona was starting to, figure things out. They won at Oregon. They won a semi-home game against Gonzaga. After that Gonzaga game, they lost 4 in a row. Since then, they've won 6 in a row. They're starting to play really good basketball. They just beat Michigan State. They just beat Oregon. They won against Wisconsin. Keep in mind, though, they win these games closely. This is a team that would be probably a heavy pick to be picked against in the first round of March Madness. I don't think so. I think Mick Cronin's got enough experience. I mean, he's made Final Four. I think he's got enough experience where he's going to get the job done and win, and maybe even win another one. I could see this team's ceiling as being about the Elite Eight, which doesn't match up with their seed line right now. Next up, a team that's been just climbing like crazy, and they're not even really underrated anymore. It's Creighton. Creighton's been playing fantastic as of late. We've talked about them a lot. I didn't like them in the preseason because I thought Pop Isaacs was not a good fit. They weren't good, and then Pop Isaacs got hurt, as sad as it is to say, and then Creighton just started going on a tear. They have now won 7 in a row. They've won 9 of 10. Their only loss was at Marquette. No harm there. They do have their gauntlet coming up. They're about to play Marquette, UConn, St. John's, your 3 best teams in the Big East, and not including Creighton. But this team's starting to play really good. Jemiah Neal's making a big step. Stephen Ashworth is great, and obviously Ryan Kalkbrenner's an All-American. Team's good. They're not even flying under the radar anymore. Next up is Memphis. Without a doubt, Memphis is underrated right now. They're 42nd at KenPom. This is not the 42nd best team in the country. They're really good. They're running through. I know people are kind of low because, and so was I at the beginning of the year, I'll admit it, because of what they did in AAC play last year. They've ran through the AAC this year. They're 9-1. Their only loss was at Temple. You know what happens? Temple's not horrible, but this team's really good. They're not just winning games. They're blowing out teams. The one at Rice was close, which was a little bit scary. They only won by 3, but other than that, they're blowing out teams. They're by far the best team. They beat Ole Miss at home by 17. The one thing I will say about Memphis, I think they're a little bit matchup dependent. We saw it with Mississippi State. They just played a lot more physical than Ole Miss plays, and Memphis lost at home to Mississippi State. But Memphis, they're flying under the radar right now. All right, now that's it for the overrated versus underrated teams. A little controversial, I know, but got to do what you got to do. Let's move on to the seed list. So this was made February 6th, which was yesterday. So this was made before Ohio State played Maryland, before St. Mary's lost to San Francisco. I don't think it's going to change very much at all. All right, let's talk about it. 1 through 68. The 1 seeds, no surprise here. It's not even up for debate. Auburn is your number 1 overall seed. Alabama is your number 2 overall seed because they are so much better in the quadrant department than Duke. Duke is better than Alabama. I think most people would say that. But Duke is your 3rd number 1 seed. Tennessee is your 4th number 1 seed. So 3 SEC teams in there. I will say I think the winner, if Purdue wins the Big Ten tournament and ends up winning the Big Ten regular season, I think they'll be a 1 seed. Maybe same goes for Houston in the Big 12, or even Iowa State, I guess, is kind of in that conversation. Even Kansas has a better resume than you think. But so Tennessee is the 4th 1 seed. Purdue winning the Big Ten as the first 2 seed. Purdue flying under the radar as well. Their metrics are awesome. 7-5 in quad 1, 6-0 in quad 2, 13-5 in the first 2 quadrants, 5th in wins above bubble. They're really good. They're flying under the radar right now. People are just bored of Purdue because they're so good every year, and I get it, but they're still awesome. Florida as your 2nd number 2 seed. Texas A&M, talked about them, and then Houston as winning the Big 12 as your last number 2 seed. Houston lacking in the quadrant wins department, but wins above bubble getting a lot better. They're up to 9th now in wins above bubble, and they're still 3rd in the net, and I think they're still 3rd at KenPom, so their metrics kind of carrying them. 3 seeds, number 1 is Kansas. People hate Kansas for some reason. Kansas is 8th in the net. They're still they're 8th at KenPom as well. That correlates to a 2 seed. Their wins above bubble is 12th, which correlates to a 3 seed. They're 6-5 in quad 1, 3-1 in quad 2. People keep saying, they're like, how is Kansas 3 seed? At best 4 seed. No, they're not. People are just, it's sad that Kansas is overrated, or not overrated. They were overrated in the preseason, and they're kind of seen as disappointing this year, and they're 9th overall in the seed list. So that just kind of shows what the expectation is. They have neutral site wins over Michigan State, who people think are awesome. They beat Duke on a neutral floor. They beat Iowa State. Their resume is really good. People just don't like them. People don't like Hunter Dickinson, but they're still a good resume. They're your first 3 seed. Iowa State as your next 3 seed, lost 3 in a row. They still got a chance to climb back. Marquette as your next 3 seed. The first three seeds are kind of in stone right now. The fourth 3 seed, I do have Texas Tech right now, because if you look behind them, there's really no clear candidate. Texas Tech is up to 7th in the net, which is why I give them a little bit of the edge. Their metrics aren't as well. They're 5-2 in quad 1, pretty solid, 20th in wins above bubble. They have one of the best wins in the country at Houston. I think that gives them the edge as the first 3 seed. Then Arizona as the first 4 seed. Man, what a climb they've made. They're in sole possession of first in the Big 12 right now. Wisconsin as your next 4 seed, as we mentioned, 4 seed across the board. Kentucky fading a little bit. They're still a 4 seed. 4 and 5 in the SEC get you a 4 seed. That's how good of a non-con Kentucky had. And then Michigan State as your next 4 seed. I really took a look at Michigan State and Ole Miss flipping. Ole Miss is your first 5 seed. Ole Miss, their resume is very, very comparable to Michigan State's. Maybe even should be flipped. It's close, but ended up giving the benefit to Michigan State in this one. Ole Miss as your first 5 seed. Missouri as your next 5 seed. Memphis as a 5 seed as well. And then St. John's winning the Big East up to a 5 seed now after that big win against Marquette. Still lacking a little bit in the metric wins department. Only 2-3 in quad 1, but 20-3 overall. Off to a great start. We're going to be seeing Rick Pitino in March. First 6 seed is Michigan right now. Michigan's up to 17 in the net. They have 10 wins inside the first 2 quadrants. Maryland as your next 6 seed. I think I would drop Maryland behind UCLA after their loss to Ohio State, so only drop 1 spot. They were close coming into it. So UCLA is your next 6 seed, and Illinois as your final 6 seed. Got a lot of questions on Illinois. They're like, how are they a 6 seed? And then I just kind of respond with, how have you lost 8 games? You're 15-8 and a 6 seed. That shows how much your metrics are kind of carrying you better than your resume. They do have 6 quad 1 wins, but they're 35th in wins above bubble. That's not very good. That is not very good. They're 35th in the country in wins above bubble. First 7 seed, Mississippi State, kind of really fallen off as of late as well. Still a good resume. Oregon, who has a ton of quadrant wins, but they'll be an underdog against a 10 seed if they're a 7 seed. Louisville as the next 7 seed, and then St. Mary's as I think I would keep St. Mary's in that 7 spot. Maybe them and Creighton would flip. I'd have to analyze the numbers, but got St. Mary's as the last 7 seed, winning the WCC. Creighton, Oklahoma, UConn, and Utah State as your 8 seeds. Creighton starting to, they seem like someone I would not want to play if I was a 1 seed and drew them as an 8 seed. Obviously, same goes with UConn. UConn has a high ceiling. I really do believe that. Your 9 seeds, New Mexico, the winner of projected winner of the Mountain West, looking really good. I got questions on Utah State being ahead of New Mexico. Utah State had a much better non-conference than New Mexico did. So they're actually 40th and 41st at the net. Utah State is 40th. Utah State is 40th. New Mexico is 41st. Utah State's better in pretty much all departments. They're better in wins above bubble. They have more quad 1 wins. New Mexico has a quad 3 loss and also a quad 4 loss that Utah State doesn't have, so that's why I got Utah State ahead of New Mexico. With that being said, I think if New Mexico wins the conference tournament, I think they will jump Utah State. At the next 9 seed, Gonzaga, they're hanging on by a thread. Gonzaga is one of the most interesting resumes in the country. They're 12th in the net. They're 11th at KenPom. Yet they don't have the wins to back it up. They're 2-6 in quad 1, 3-1 in quad 2, 48th in wins above bubble. Their metrics are carrying them. Their resume is good enough to get them in the tournament, but they're seeded as a 9 seed because their metrics are high. You don't want them as an 11 seed because that's just not fair to the 6 seed that they have to play. The team that Gonzaga drilled on opening night, Baylor, I don't think Baylor's going to win a game in March this year. They might win one. They're definitely not going to the Sweet 16 this year. I don't see it with this team. I was so high on Baylor in the preseason. They're just not as good as I thought they were going to be, quite frankly. Next 9 seed, West Virginia. They are still comfortably in the tournament. Next up as the 10 seeds, Clemson. Next up is Ohio State. I think Ohio State would be up to a 9 seed now and bump West Virginia to the first 10 seed and Clemson to the next 10 seed after Ohio State's quad 1 win over Maryland. Ohio State's up to 26th in the net. Pretty good. Nebraska in the tournament now. They've kind of had a strange season. They were really good at the start of the year, then really spiraled downhill in the start of Big Ten play, and now they're good again. So they're comfortably in the tournament. And then Vanderbilt as your last 10 seed, just getting stuff done. They're, like I said, the last 10 seed, Vanderbilt, and your first team out of the tournament, there's a big gap as of right now. First 11 seed, I do have Georgia as your last bye team. And then moving on to the first 4, where we will go to the bubble bracket, or the bubble graphic, Texas, San Diego State, Wake Forest, and Arkansas as your last team in. So last 4 byes. Right now it's Ohio State, Nebraska, Vanderbilt, Georgia. As mentioned, I would move Ohio State up, which means your last 4 byes would be Clemson, Nebraska, Vanderbilt, Georgia. First 4, Texas, San Diego State, Wake Forest, and Arkansas. Arkansas and SMU. SMU is the first team out right now. They are about as close to a coin flip as you can imagine. Let's talk about their comparatives right here real quick. SMU's 39th in the net, Arkansas 44th in the net. Okay, close. SMU's 18-5, Arkansas's 14-8. The SEC is like 30 times better than the ACC, so kind of take that with a grain of salt. And this shows because their wins against bubble, Arkansas is 45th, SMU is 47th, so pretty comparable there. The reason I have Arkansas in is Arkansas is 3-6 in quad 1. SMU doesn't have a quad 1 win yet. They're 0-4 right now. Now Arkansas is 1-2 in quad 2. SMU's 4-1. Still not enough to me if you don't have a quad 1 win. I don't think they would put you in, but it is close as mentioned. But I give the benefit to Arkansas in that case. Second team out, BYU. BYU, if they just would have beaten Arizona the other night, they'd have been in their 50th in wins above bubble, kind of holding them back. 2-5 in quad 1. So 2-5 in quad 1, 50th in wins above bubble. Arkansas is 3-6 in quad 1, which is better, and 45th in wins above bubble, which is also better. So I give Arkansas over them, over SMU, and then BYU. UCF is right behind them. They are not ranked very well in the net. KenPom, they're 66th in net. They're 3-6 in quad 1, same as Arkansas, 49th in wins above bubble, but they're down at 66th in the net and low at KenPom as well. And then the final first 4 team out is Xavier. Xavier's still in the conversation. I think Xavier has a better chance of getting into the tournament than UCF, quite frankly. Maybe even BYU, maybe even SMU, because they've got some opportunities. And I, quite frankly, if you were to put Xavier and BYU on a neutral floor, I think I would take Xavier, same with SMU, but they've had some injury problems. Their resume isn't too spectacular. So moving on to the next 4 out, North Carolina. Like as mentioned, North Carolina's your 5th team out. They're not close to having like the same resume as even Arkansas, believe it or not. Comparing the numbers, Arkansas 3-6 in quad 1, North Carolina 1-9, wins above bubble. Arkansas 45th, North Carolina 51st. North Carolina has a quad 3 loss, that game at home to Stanford. Arkansas doesn't have any of those. Arkansas is higher ranked at the net, so it's a clear big gap from Arkansas to North Carolina. So they're not real close. Same goes for Indiana. Indiana's right behind them, and then Arizona State is 12-10, yet still right here because there's even a big drop off. Well, the last team in, or 8th team out, I guess, is Pitt. And there's a clear drop-off even from then. You're next up, you're maybe looking at, the USCs. You're looking at, who else am I missing here? You got some mid-majors that might steal some bids, like the VCUs. If they don't win the A-10 tournament, if Dayton wins the A-10 tournament, VCU is in this conversation. Same goes for Drake. And Boise State's, starting to climb up. But there's a huge gap from Pitt to, like, Boise State. So it's ugly. The bubble seems uglier than it usually is, but this is what we're looking at. So going back to the original graphic, Georgia as your first 11 seed, Texas playing San Diego State in a first 4 game, and then Drake as an 11 seed out of the Missouri Valley, Wake Forest playing Arkansas. Arkansas your last team in. Moving on to the 12 seeds, these are your automatic qualifiers. VCU out of the A10, as we mentioned, UC Irvine out of the Big West, Yale out of the Ivy League. Man, I feel so bad for any 5 seed that has to draw Yale every single year. Yale just somehow wins in March. Arkansas State as your final 12 seed. McNeese as a 13 seed. Grand Canyon also as a 13 seed. And then the Akron Zips, who are blazing hot right now, as a 13 seed. Samford as your final 13 seed. High Point as your first 14 seed. They are by far the best 14 seed. High Point, if they win the tournament, they will definitely move up to a 13 seed, because this is saying that all the favorites would win. All the favorite of the 12 seeds will win. Say UC Riverside wins the Big West. They're not going to be ranked higher than High Point, I wouldn't think. Lipscomb as your second 14 seed. Towson out of the CAA. I think UNC Wilmington's the best team, but I keep going back and forth in the CAA. Charleston's in there. Even Drexel's not bad. Towson, William and Mary. No idea. The CAA is up for grabs. Kind of a fun conference to follow this year. Northern Colorado, a sneaky good team, as a 14 seed as well. In the 15 seeds, Jacksonville State, Bryant, Cleveland State, and Norfolk State up a seed line. How about Norfolk State? I had them as a 16 seed. Now they're up to a 15 seed. Football team will be coached by Michael Vick this year. How about that? 16 seeds, Marist, Omaha, and then in the first 4 games, Central Connecticut State taking on Morehead State. This is not your typical Morehead State team. I will say that they are not as good as you might think. And then Southern taking on American out of the Patriot League. That is it for the entire Bracketology. That is it for more stuff like that. Go check out the Instagram, the Twitter, the TikTok, once again, at Bracket Science with 2 S's. Let's move into the games to watch. So we're recording this Friday about 11 o'clock a.m. So we do have some games to note on Friday, particularly one good one. Starts at 7 o'clock. USC goes to number 7 Purdue. Purdue favored by 13.5. USC, you win this one, go win at Mackey. You give yourself a chance in getting into the bubble conversation. Will it happen? Probably not. At 7 o'clock on ESPN2, VCU goes to Dayton. Obviously a tough place to play. Dayton, VCU favored by 1.5 on the road. I don't know about that one. I think Dayton might be able to get the job done. I don't think Dayton's near as good as VCU. That's going to be a tough place to play for VCU. At 8 o'clock on Fox, this is the best game of the night. Number 12, St. John's, in sole control of first place of the Big East, goes to the defending back-to-back national champion, number 19, UConn. Now, KenPom's got the line -1. The FanDuel line out right now is -3.5. So people leaning towards UConn, as would I. I think UConn's going to win this game. At 9 o'clock on ESPNU, St. Louis goes to St. Joseph's. Who really cares that much? These teams are not in the conversation for pretty much, unless they win their conference tournament. But St. Joe's favored by 6.5 if you just are a fan of college basketball and want to watch it. Let's move on to Saturday. Saturday is the game to know. Look at this graphic. A lot of single-digit favoredness in this one. The biggest spread is in a top 6 matchup. So we're going to have some good games. This is we got this split into 2 graphics. Must-watch games and under-the-radar games starting at noon on ESPN. Number 4, Tennessee goes to Oklahoma. Tennessee's favored by 4 on the road. I think Oklahoma might get some home juju here and pick up a huge win. 1 o'clock on CBS, number 24, Michigan goes to Indiana. Michigan favored by 4 at Assembly Hall. Maybe a Mike Woodson, final curtain call here. Well, can Indiana get a win? If Indiana gets a win here, they're not completely out of the tournament. We'll see. I don't know. That's ugly. Dusty May, who Indiana could have had going to Assembly Hall, I'm sure he wants to win that game pretty badly. 2 o'clock on Fox, number 11, Marquette goes to Creighton. Creighton favored by 1 in that one at home. That'll, without a doubt, be a fun one. Both teams, battling for second place right now in the Big East behind St. John's. So if St. John's loses, this game is going to be it's going to be a bloodbath. At 3:30 on the SEC Network, top 15 matchup, number 10, Texas A&M goes to number 15, Missouri. This is a fun matchup in the SEC. At 4 o'clock, the game of the day on ESPN2, number 6, Florida goes to number 1, Auburn. Florida is 5th at KenPom. Auburn's 1st at KenPom, and Auburn is an 8-point favorite in that one. That's how good Auburn is. Auburn favored by 8. I would be surprised if Florida goes in and wins, because I don't think I will ever bet against Auburn. I will just say it right here. I think Auburn's going to win the national championship. This looks like about as invincible of a team as I can remember. And yes, I'm even including that UConn team last year. I think this Auburn team is... If Auburn were to match up with Duke in the in the NCAA tournament, I would feel a lot less confident about it. However, I don't think I see Auburn losing until, maybe the Elite Eight, Final Four. Duke is a little bit more vulnerable. We saw it with NC State. We saw them with losing to Kentucky and even to Kansas. They're a little bit more vulnerable, but if Duke were to play Auburn in the national championship game, Duke would probably, if not favored, be, 1 or 2 point underdogs. So as long as Auburn doesn't draw Duke in the national championship game, I'm taking them to win it all. Speaking of Duke, they travel to Clemson at 6:30 on ESPN. Duke's favored by 6 in this one, even on the road. Clemson coming off that brutal loss to Georgia Tech at home. Obviously seems like a trap game since they were probably looking ahead to Duke. The big news in this one, Dickie V will be on the call in this one, his first game back after all his cancer diagnosis and stuff like that. So that'll bring in a lot of people. Obviously, everyone loves Dickie V. This will be a fun game to watch, and what better than Duke playing in this game with Cooper Flagg, the biggest story in the sport, and Dickie V getting to call that game. That's a good story. That'll be a lot of fun. Sticking with ESPN at 8:30 on ESPN, number 3 Alabama goes to Arkansas. Both teams playing fantastically right now. Alabama been playing great. Arkansas, 2 huge road wins. Can they get it done against this one? If they win this one, you might not be looking at a first 4 team. You might be looking at like a 10 seed, even climbing up into the 9 seed. So that would be a crazy turn of events. Alabama is favored by 4 on the road. At 10:30 on ESPN, number 13 Texas Tech travels to number 20 Arizona. Arizona favored by 3 in that one. Texas Tech beat them by 16 earlier in the year. It was closer than that, but they ended up pulling away late. These are 2 teams I have in my top 10 personally. I know it's just top 20 in the AP poll. The AP poll knows pretty much, not a whole lot, but this will be a fun matchup. These are your top 2 of your top 3. Arizona's in first in the Big 12. Texas Tech is right there with Houston, so that'll be a good one. Now the under-the-radar games, some other good games to note. We'll go through these quickly. Oregon goes to number 9, Michigan State. Both teams kind of in desperate need of a win. 12 o'clock on Fox, Michigan State favored by 8. In that one, at 1 o'clock on the SEC Network, Texas goes to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, one of our last 4 byes. Texas, one of our first 4 teams. So both teams need a win. 1 o'clock on the SEC Network, Texas favored by 1 in that one. At 2 o'clock on ESPN, number 16 Kansas goes to Kansas State in a rivalry game here. Kansas is favored by 6, but Kansas State been playing really good basketball as of late. So a little bit of a trap game there, it seemed. Not a trap game, but just a tough one. At 2 o'clock on ESPN Plus, UCF needs a win bad, but they go to Baylor. Baylor favored by 10. In this game, UCF needs a win bad. Baylor can't really afford to lose this one either, though, so a kind of important game there. 4 o'clock on ESPNU, 2 teams as I have as next 4 out. Pitt goes to North Carolina. North Carolina favored by 4 in this one. If North Carolina loses this one, Hubert Davis, I think he's going to be around for next year, but North Carolina fans are not happy with him. At 6 o'clock on the SEC Network, number 22 Mississippi State goes to Georgia. Georgia favored by 3 in this one. RJ Melendez going back to Georgia. I think RJ Melendez stinks, quite frankly. I think Georgia's going to win this game in a little revenge game, but Mississippi State's a team you just can't bet. Mostly because of RJ Melendez. He can be good, he can make shots, but a lot of times he's just like, how is this guy a starter in Division I? Riley Kugel, kind of hit or miss as well. He's been pretty good. But I think I'm going to take Georgia in this one. I'm not in on Mississippi State. At 6 o'clock on ESPN2, BYU goes to Cincinnati. Cincinnati favored by 1. Cincinnati coming off a big win against UCF. You win this one, maybe you get back in the conversation of somehow stealing a bid. Then at 10 o'clock on ESPNU, one of the best mid-major games we'll see, UC San Diego goes to UC Irvine, where UC Irvine is favored by 2 in that game. Then on Sunday, a few games to note just quickly. The only ones we'll mention. Rutgers goes to Maryland, number 18 Maryland on 12 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. Maryland favored by 12. Also at 12 o'clock on FS1, Xavier goes to Villanova. Villanova favored by 4. Xavier with a good chance here to get a win that boosts them closer to the tournament. And then at 2 o'clock on the Big Ten Network, Ohio State goes to Nebraska. 2 teams as 9, 10 seeds right now. Nebraska favored by 1 in that one at 2 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. That's going to do it for the show today. Thanks to everyone who stuck with us. We talked about a lot today. Some underrated teams, some overrated teams, some bracketology, some games to watch. Hopefully it's going to be just as entertaining as a week as we've had in the past. These past couple weeks have been about as entertaining as I can remember in college basketball. Remember, to hit that like button before you head out. Subscribe, hit the post notification so you're updated on the college basketball world. Everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy the weekend of hoops. Stay safe out there. See you later.